On June 23rd, investors in 3M Company breathed a sigh of relief when the company announced an agreement to provide up to $10.3 billion in funding for PFAS treatment technologies and testing to public water suppliers over a 13-year period. However, what appears to be a final resolution to the terrible PFAS case could spell disaster for their dividend. In a previous video, we analyzed 3M's dividend and financial growth before the settlement was reached, which you can watch by clicking the link in the description. In this video, I explain why, despite recent good news, the dividend may still be in jeopardy. We'll look at the safety of 3M's dividend using a model calculation that includes payments for litigation and refinancing of forthcoming maturities. Before we get started, leave a comment letting me know how you feel about 3M's dividend. Then leave a comment after you finish the video letting me know if your opinion has changed. Okay, let's jump in. Investors initially responded favorably to the news that 3M had agreed to pay up to $10.3 billion in PFAS-related lawsuits. However, upon deeper examination, I don't share the market's confidence. Let me explain. Firstly, investors shouldn't simply split the $10.3 billion penalty 3M would incur in the second quarter of 2023 by 13 years. The fee is referred to by the corporation as present value, which means that it was discounted at a specified rate. 3M has committed to pay up to $12.5 billion in undiscounted terms between 2024 and 2036. In the best case scenario, the total compensation amount will only be $10.5 billion, since 3M is anticipated to enter into separate settlement agreements with the cities of Stuart, Florida and Rome, Georgia. To be modest, we'll estimate a $12.5 billion cost, and it's also worth noting that the payments are highly front-loaded. Given 3M's huge looming debt maturities, the front-loaded payments place severe strain on the company's financial condition. To fulfill all forthcoming maturities and probable PFAS-related obligations, the business needs to raise $11.3 billion between 2023 and 2025. Because 3M's debt repayment ability is somewhat limited, the business will almost certainly need to refinance the majority, if not all, of the approaching maturities, and may need to borrow more debt to meet the PFAS-related obligations. We'll cover this topic later in the video. Secondly, keep in mind that the settlement solely addresses claims from public water suppliers in the United States. Other litigants, such as those claiming reimbursements for medical expenses, are not included. With broad media coverage of the PFAS cases, the door for individuals seeking compensation for PFAS-related health concerns is now wide open. Remember that PFASs are detectable in the blood of around 98% of the US population, owing to their widespread usage over an extended period of time. Of course, a detectable serum concentration does not always imply harmful health impacts, but there is a growing body of data associating PFAS serum or drinking water concentrations to particular health issues. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, PFAS may affect reproduction, thyroid function, the immune system, and injure the liver. A few studies have also linked PFAS to various types of cancer, like prostate cancer and breast cancer. According to this 2022 review article, the cancer sites with the most evidence of an association with PFAS are testicular and kidney cancer. Overall, I think that proving a causal relationship between PFAS and specific forms of sickness or the development of certain types of cancer will be challenging, but it does not indicate that litigation will be futile. I'm quite concerned about the PFAS-related liabilities, owing in part to 3M's limited financial flexibility. Finally, the settlement includes PFAS pollution of drinking water outside the United States. The European Union, particularly Belgium, is also putting pressure on 3M Company. Until 2002, the company's Zwijndrecht factory generated perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, or PFOS, and people were discovered to have blood PFOS amounts seemingly as high as those frequently seen in industrial wastewater, as well as thyroid dysfunction. 3M is also facing criminal allegations in the region for improper waste disposal. 3M was ordered to temporarily close the factory due to continuous pollution, but was later permitted to partially restart operations. Compensation and cleanup expenses are difficult to quantify, but they're expected to be in the billions of dollars. Finally, 3M's internal legal expenses shouldn't be overlooked. I believe it's realistic to anticipate that the PFAS case will cost the corporation more than $20 billion. 3M is a dividend aristocrat with a 64-year track record of dividend increases, therefore a dividend cut seems unlikely. However, in the context of defending dividend safety, this company's decades-long track record may be shaky, especially considering the enormous payouts ahead. What's important are the fundamentals, so let's examine them. Over the last 3 years, 3M earned $5.6 billion in yearly free cash flow. According to 3M's debt profile, the business presently pays about $560 million in interest on its debt. Adding these charges to free cash flow does not account for a potential tax shield, but I feel it's a reasonable approximation for estimating the company's debt payment costs. Leaving out the tax benefits of interest spending, the outcome is a modest margin of safety. Because the maturities of 3M's impending debt are known, modeling the impacts of refinancing the debt is simple. The yield to maturity on 3M's longer-term bonds is now at 5.4%, which is a decent estimate of the company's current refinancing expenses. For the sake of simplicity, I anticipate interest rates to remain steady in future years. Assuming that 3M refinances all debts at maturity, the yearly interest expenditure will increase steadily to 2031 due to minor maturities in subsequent years. I recognize that the assumption that 3M will need to refinance all impending maturities is a prudent one. However, given the anticipated legal expenses, there will likely be little or no surplus free cash flow available to repay bonds at maturity. According to the payment profile for PFAS-related obligations to U.S. public water suppliers, these payments can be immediately incorporated into the model. To be careful, we included $200 million in recurrent yearly legal fees to the calculation, escalating at 3% per year. Finally, assuming Morningstar's $4 billion charge for the combat arms litigation is correct, and using a weighted average cost of capital of 7.8% as the discount rate, 3M could be required to make annual payments of $425 million by 2036 to settle the claims. When all of these more or less determinable expenditures are added together and compared to pre-interest free cash flow, 3M's dividend appears secure. Even though there will be years when total costs exceed pre-interest free cash flow, the expenses are more than covered on a cumulative basis. Furthermore, 3M has announced restructuring actions that are expected to result in pre-tax savings of $700 million to $900 million. One may argue that predicting organic free cash flow growth of 3% per year is overly optimistic. But even if 3M's free cash flow stagnates for the next decade, costs are still covered. While this may appear to be excellent news on the surface, keep in mind that PFAS lawsuits that don't involve U.S. public water providers were not included in this model. If we add an additional $10 billion in PFAS litigation costs, a dividend cut should be expected, assuming that 3M does not incur significant amounts of additional debt. Investors originally responded favorably to 3M's agreement with public water providers. Less uncertainty is always a good thing for a company. However, a deeper analysis revealed a highly front-loaded payment structure as well as the fact that the payment will be more than $2 billion greater in absolute terms. Similarly, it's critical to realize that the agreement does not cover overseas claims or product liability claims. The PFAS litigation might cost 3M well over $20 billion in total. Considering 3M's maturity profile, which includes large near-term maturities, PFAS litigation payments totaling more than $7 billion through 2027 represent a considerable drag on the company's financial condition. Even if interest rates remain unchanged and 3M refinances all impending maturities at a yield of 5.4%, the business will be able to meet its interest and litigation costs as well as its dividend from free cash flow. Of course, this implies that 3M's operating performance dramatically improves in the following years and that a recession is averted. The dividend becomes unsustainable, however, after accounting for $4 billion in present value combat arms legal fees spread out over 13 years and another $10 billion in PFAS litigation. The safety of the dividend ultimately comes down to the outcome of these two pending lawsuits. If a settlement is reached for non-US entities and individuals in the PFAS case, the dividend is likely doomed. If these costs are less than expected or evaporate entirely, the current share prices will be seen as a steal 10 years from now. I'll keep you posted as the story unfolds. If you like this video, you'll love our recent video analyzing the top 5 dividend stocks on the market today, which you can watch by clicking the video card here or the link in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and take it easy.